The message came through on every channel known to humanity. Audio, video, text, even encoded light pulses aimed at the moon's surface. It didn't matter where you lived, on Earth, Mars, the moons of Jupiter, or the floating citadels above Venus. You heard it. You felt it. The Galaxy Council had spoken. They called it a request. But everyone knew better. It was a demand. Cold, clinical, and dressed up in a cloak of protocol. They wanted tribute, resources, ships, bodies, minds. They said it was to maintain galactic balance. Said Earth was overdue for its contribution to the union of civilized systems. But beneath all the flowery terms, it was a shakedown. Pay up or be put down. The Council didn't expect resistance. Humanity was young, relatively unrefined, scattered across less than 5% of known habitable space. They believed we would comply, just like the others did. Planets that folded under pressure, species that handed over their young, cultures that erased their own history in exchange for peaceful assimilation. But they misunderstood something fundamental. They didn't know what it meant to be human. The first meeting happened on Europa, inside the ice core facility the media dubbed the Spine. The representatives of Earth's many nations had gathered, along with the outer colonies and the non-affiliated civilian leaders. It was chaotic. There were protests in the halls, shouting in every dialect. 1,000 viewpoints, one moment from civil collapse. And then she spoke. Admiral Reyna Holt. No one had seen her in 5 years. She'd vanished after the Martian incident, when half a fleet disappeared under mysterious circumstances during a mining rights war near the asteroid belt. Some said she'd gone rogue. Some said she was dead. She walked into the room wearing old-world naval black, a silver phoenix pin on her left collar, and silence fell like gravity. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. They don't want peace, she said, arms crossed, eyes like frostbite. They want obedience. She didn't need to convince anyone after that. The footage from Council-compliant planets made sure of that. Systems stripped bare, cities re-engineered for alien needs, children sent to re-education vessels. Cultural heritage reduced to museums curated by non-human historians. This wasn't tribute. This was slow extermination. Earth's official response came 1 week later. No decorated diplomat. No carefully worded reply. Instead, an old signal, radio, basic frequency, unencrypted, was broadcast across every galactic relay we could reach. The same signal our ancestors used to say hello to the stars centuries ago. And this time, it carried one message. We do not yield. Come and take it. They did. 6 Council warships entered our solar system less than a month later. They weren't scouts, they were executioners, ships the size of cities, weapons with the power to atomize continents, a show of force designed to end a species before it became a problem. The first one was named Orolith. It fired a test blast into Neptune's outer ring, sending a wave of frozen debris into deep space. That's when we responded. Not from Earth, not from Mars, but from the dark, where they didn't expect us. We'd been hiding things, a lot of things. 3 human ships decloaked near Uranus's orbit, smaller, faster, meaner, not built for diplomacy, built for the sole purpose of tearing things apart. Project Scorch, unacknowledged, unfunded, illegal in some Earth governments, and now our only shot at survival. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't hail the Council ships. They just attacked. 2 hours later, Orolith was gone. Not just destroyed, scrambled. Its core destabilized and collapsed into itself. The other 5 ships panicked. One tried to flee. It didn't make it far. Council fleets across the stars suddenly paused their movements. Messages flowed back and forth between species in 1,000 languages, trying to explain what had just happened. No one had ever stood against the Council like this. No one had ever struck first and won. Humanity had just declared war on the galaxy, and we didn't flinch. They called it the Neptune Incident in the archives that came later, but for those who lived through it, who watched from domes on Luna or huddled inside bunkers beneath the Martian crust, it was more than an incident. It was the day everything changed. The day humanity became something else. Back on Earth, people didn't sleep. Not really. The feeds were filled with replay loops. Orolith, the pride of the Galactic Union's enforcement fleet, vanishing into a ruptured fold of itself, crushed like a tin can in slow motion. People cheered, cried, screamed, prayed. Some couldn't believe it was real. Others never doubted we'd do it. But the silence after was louder than the explosion, because now the question hung in the vacuum. What comes next? Admiral Reyna Holt sat alone in the control chamber beneath the ocean floor off the coast of New Greenland. She stared at the holographic feed of the outer system. Jupiter's stormy sphere, Saturn's icy rings, the floating refugee colonies around Uranus. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. The attack on the council ships had worked. Brilliantly, unexpectedly. But that was a sucker punch, not a war plan. Scorch-class vessels were experimental, barely tested, and their captains weren't just soldiers. They were ghosts, people who no longer existed on official records. People like Commander Rin, the man who led the strike and hadn't bothered to send a full report. He had sent only 2 words, one down. And now Reyna was getting pinged every hour by command centers from Terra Prime to Titan. No one had expected the strike to work that well. No one had expected Orolith to be erased from existence like a bug under a boot. Reyna hadn't told them everything, not even her own allies. The council wasn't going to retreat. They weren't going to open negotiations. They weren't going to sulk away into the void and rethink their policies. They were going to retaliate. And when they did, they wouldn't send 6 ships. They'd send 600. In the orbital hub above Mars, Director Alan Trace paced across his steel-floored command deck, surrounded by analysts screaming into headsets and screens overflowing with data. "We need to leave the inner system," he said, not for the first time. "We need to scatter. Make them chase ghosts across the belt. We can't fight them here." "Retreat?" scoffed Commander Aranel, her arms crossed and face tight with disgust. "After our first actual victory in 100 years of alien humiliation, they asked for tribute. We gave them blood. And now you want to run?" Ilan turned slowly to her, the blue of Mars shining behind him through reinforced glass. "They're not done asking, Ara, and they're not done bleeding either. But this isn't a win. This was a spark, a warning shot. What comes next isn't a fair fight, it's a purge. We're humans. We're cockroaches to them." Ara's voice dropped low. "Then let's be the kind that crawls down their throats while they sleep." The next move didn't come from the Council's home systems. It came from their proxies, species long since absorbed, reshaped, and made loyal through fear, money, or necessity. The Veltraxians were first. Insectoid, precise, efficient. They struck at Ceres, the mining colony in the belt, disabling its reactor from orbit and flooding its domes with engineered spores that reduced flesh to slurry. No warning, no demands. 4,000 dead in under 6 minutes. Then came the Archaean, the artificial minds of steel and bone, who dropped into orbit above Io and transmitted a single message: comply or vanish. The broadcast ended, and the colony did just that, vaporized by an orbital lance that left nothing but glass. In less than a week, the Council had made its stance clear. No negotiation, no compromise. They'd make examples of us until the rest of humanity fell in line, or died. But something unexpected happened next. Instead of surrendering, Earth unified. The old divisions didn't matter anymore. Flags didn't matter. Borders, corporations, rivalries, they all became irrelevant overnight. When you're being hunted as a species, survival becomes the only ideology. From the underground megacities in what used to be the Pacific States, to the solar wind farms on Mercury's Terminator line, everyone mobilized. Engineers worked without sleep. Civilians learned to operate railguns. Retired soldiers climbed into exosuits rusted from disuse. Humanity didn't form an army. It became one. In a decommissioned station orbiting Pluto, Commander Rin stood in front of his crew. 37 men and women who were ghosts like him. No names, no ranks worth mentioning. Just call signs, and a shared understanding that they weren't going to survive the year. The room was dark, cold. He liked it that way. "Council fleets are forming along the Scutum Arm," he said, gesturing at the projection behind him. "Estimated time to Sol entry, 9 days." He turned slowly. "We'll be dead in 10, but not before we take 5 of them with us." There were no cheers, just nods. Rin didn't recruit heroes. He bred problems. People too dangerous to live in peace. Soldiers who didn't stop killing when the war ended. Scientists who built things they weren't supposed to. Hackers who'd rewritten orbital laws for fun. He built them a home in the dark. Now he was going to aim them like bullets. Meanwhile, in the core systems of the Council's territory, chaos simmered. The destruction of Auralith had sent shockwaves through their ranks. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of such a blow. Their ships were crude, their minds unrefined, their technology decades behind. But Earth had secrets, and more importantly, Earth had rage. Whispers of rebellion began echoing across other subjugated worlds. Not loud, not organized, but present. The humans had done what no one else had dared. They had said no, and they had meant it. For the first time in millennia, the Council didn't look invincible. They looked vulnerable. And that was dangerous. Back on Earth, under the Black Mountain Range, Admiral Holt met with the last person she ever thought she'd need again. Dr. Lynn Sorel, a war criminal, officially dead, unofficially in cryostasis for 9 years. She wasn't just a physicist. She was the architect of the Vex engine, a folded space warping device that had been banned across 143 star systems for turning time into a weapon. Her experiments had once broken a moon in half, and now Reyna needed her. Lynn sat across from her in a freezing room with no windows, sipping tea like she'd just woken from a nap. "You don't want my advice," she said calmly. "You want my sins." "I want your brilliance," Reyna replied. Lynn smiled. "Then you'll have to accept my madness." It was day 11 when the Second Fleet arrived. Not 6 ships this time. 80. They came in tight formation, flanked by drone carriers and surrounded by a defensive grid strong enough to repel meteor storms. They didn't send a message. They didn't need to. Their arrival was a message. They were here to end Earth. Within minutes, the assault began. Orbital defenses fired blindly. Swarms of human-made drones surged from the outer system in kamikaze waves. The solar defense ring, half-finished and barely tested, lit up like the sun, cutting through Council formations with concentrated beams of nuclear light. But it wasn't enough. Ships fell, stations cracked, Mars lost an entire hemisphere. The orbital platforms above Earth began to shatter one by one. And then, silence. A pulse from the moon, the old relay base, thought abandoned for decades, suddenly came online. It transmitted a single code. Arc Protocol 7. The sky above Earth changed, and the Council finally understood why we had never surrendered. We were stalling. From deep below the Pacific Trench, a craft older than any known registry rose. Black, smooth, shaped like a spear point carved from void. It hummed with energy that didn't match any known Council reading. It was Arc-7, the last project of a human mind long since erased from history. Built in secret, powered by something forbidden, shielded not by metal, but by warped space itself. It didn't fire traditional weapons. It broke reality. The first Council destroyer to approach it simply stopped existing, not exploded, not damaged, just erased. Arc-7 fired again, and again, and again, and Earth's skies became silent once more. But war wasn't victory, because the Council would not stop, and Earth would not yield. This was no longer a conflict over tribute. This was extinction or defiance. There was no middle ground now, just two truths screaming across the stars. Humanity was not afraid, and the galaxy had underestimated them for the last time. The silence after Arc-7 fired wasn't peace. It was shock. Across the stars, alien minds who believed they understood war, dominance, and fear suddenly realized they had been playing a different game. A primitive race, barely clawing its way into the stars a few centuries ago, had just erased a flagship built over generations. No wreckage, no warning, just nothing. And from that, nothing came panic. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, a ring-shaped monolith orbiting the gas giant Norihal, the high delegates of the Union argued with each other for the first time in centuries. "We should glass their planet," barked Vayak, the fleshless warden of the Arachon, whose voice crackled like breaking bones. "They are insects, playing with fire." "They are insects," said Ern Val-Ash, the crystalline envoy of the Illith, "who just vaporized your most advanced cruiser. If they are insects, what does that make you?" The room hissed. Ancient alliances creaked. The Council was built on fear, but fear had changed its direction. Some wanted escalation. Others spoke of containment. A few, only a few, whispered what had always been forbidden: negotiation. But the Emperor of the Council, the being known only as the Speaker of Suns, made his choice in one sentence. "Humanity has declared war on order itself. Let us show them what disorder truly is." Back on Earth, under a shielded dome deep in the Sierra Range, Admiral Holt sat before a circular table with the 10 most dangerous minds humanity still claimed. Dr. Lynn Sorrell spun a glass sphere lazily in her palm. "The warp distortion Arc-7 uses is unsustainable. Keep firing it like a toy, and we'll tear a hole in local space." "Then we aim it better," Holt said. Lynn raised an eyebrow. "Aim it where? At what? The Council won't send fleets anymore. That's what you don't understand. They're going to send storms. They're going to send diseases that think. They'll make your oceans scrum." The others around the table shifted. Some didn't believe Lynn. Some believed her too much. Commander Ara Nell leaned forward. "Then we don't wait. We go to them." Silence. Holt tapped a small screen. A star map expanded above the table, showing not just Council space, but the underlay. The systems where Council control was weakest. The colonies forced into tribute decades ago. The worlds that had never rebelled because no one ever gave them permission. Until now. "We don't just defend," Holt said. "We make this contagious." Project Ember was activated that night. Its goal wasn't conquest. It was contagion, a slow-burning rebellion lit across stars the Council thought it had pacified. Human agents, soldiers, and sympathizers would infiltrate tribute worlds, activate long-dead resistances, and hand them the most dangerous thing in the universe: hope. The first planet to fall wasn't Earth's doing. It was Thalos III, a swamp world home to the enslaved Vari species, amphibious, empathetic, and born into servitude. When news of Auralith's destruction reached their surface via smuggled broadcasts, the Vari didn't wait for permission. They rose. With stolen tools and sharpened rocks, they overwhelmed their governors, hijacked a merchant vessel, and transmitted this across Council space. Earth did not bow. Why should we? It wasn't elegant. It wasn't strategic. But it worked. By the time human agents arrived on Thalos 3, the rebellion was already spreading like fire in dry grass. And in its center stood a young Vari, barely adult, covered in blood and firelight, chanting Earth's message in broken English. We will not yield, far from the chaos. Hidden deep inside the hollowed moon of Nereus, Commander Rin gathered his ghosts for their next strike. He was older now, not in years, but in weight. Every success made things harder, not easier. Every mission meant more retaliation, more names etched into the back of his mind. They were preparing to strike a council relay station, not for resources, not for pride, but for information. If they could access the inner network, they could expose what the council had hidden from the galaxy for generations. Rin stood before his crew. "Don't think about coming back. That's not why we're here." No one asked why they were here. They already knew. Meanwhile, in Earth's upper orbit, the shield lattice was failing. The council wasn't throwing ships anymore. They were throwing physics. Gravitational interference pulses began to ripple through the outer system. Mercury's orbit trembled. Data stopped flowing from Neptune. A strange hum began to echo across deep space frequencies, like something ancient had woken up. And then came the pulse. One moment, Earth's skies were clear. The next, every satellite from Mars inward fried at once. Blinded, brain dead, communications stuttered, stations went dark. The blackout lasted only 12 seconds. But in that time, 5 major defense systems went offline. It was a test, a warning, or a preview. Down in the Pacific Trench, Arc 7 stirred again. It had rested for a week since the last attack, enough time for its internal systems to realign the fractured space around it. Dr. Lin stood on a platform above its obsidian hull, whispering to herself in old code, half mad and fully brilliant. Holt joined her, arms crossed. "You once said using this more than 3 times could collapse Sol's gravitational field." Lin nodded absently. "I did. That's still true, probably." Holt's voice was iron. "And yet you're charging it again." Lin looked up, smiling faintly. "We're already in the fire, Admiral. I'm just trying to shape the flames." The Council's next move wasn't military. It was psychological. Across hundreds of systems, they broadcast footage. Humans dying, screaming, begging. Real? Simulated? No one could tell. On alien worlds, they aired these images to convince the masses Earth was losing, that the rebellion was foolish, that hope was suicide. But humans are strange creatures. The more they were shown their own pain, the more it reminded them what they were fighting for. And then, something changed. A signal arrived, encrypted in an old Earth dialect, one only used during the cold conflicts of the 21st century. It came from outside the system, a single line of text. "New allies, not human, not council, sending coordinates. Don't trust ships shaped like pyramids." At first they thought it was a trap. Then the ship arrived, glimmering, organic, shaped like a spiral shell, and humming with tones no one had ever heard before. It hovered above Mars, and a voice echoed through every mind on the planet at once. "We remember what it is to be hunted." They called themselves the Orinocs, a species once powerful, thought extinct, exiled by the Council for refusing to participate in the tribute millennia ago. They had survived in the edges of reality, in broken stars and dead zones, and now they were ready to fight again. Not for humanity, but with humanity. Holt didn't trust them. Rin didn't care. Ara wanted to learn from them. Lin wanted to dissect them. But it didn't matter, because the next Council fleet wasn't coming to negotiate or threaten. It was coming to end. They called it the Silencer. Not a fleet. A weapon. A moon-sized station moving at impossible speed, consuming gravitational wells and redirecting them like whips of force. It didn't destroy planets. It crushed their timelines, made their history fold in on itself. The Council would erase Earth not by fire, but by unmaking its past. And Earth's only hope now rested in a gamble. Lynn's next prototype. A device that could mirror what the silencer did, redirect the quantum structure of local space. But it would require a sacrifice, a starship large enough to host the core. A crew willing to die screaming, and a navigator with no attachment to linear time. Only one person fit the last requirement. Commander Ryn. He accepted without asking questions, not because he was brave, but because, in his eyes, he was already dead. The war had taken everything. He was just waiting for the final punch. Holt met him at the hangar. She handed him an old Earth coin. "What's this for?" he asked. "For luck." Ryn smirked. "I thought we didn't believe in luck anymore." She met his eyes. "Today, I want to." As the silencer neared Saturn, Earth launched its final mission. Ryn's ship, the Glass Hound, surged forward, carrying Lynn's device, the hopes of billions, and a man ready to bend space until it screamed. The plan wasn't complicated. Get close, get inside, break reality before reality broke Earth. Simple, impossible. Human. The Glass Hound drifted like a ghost toward the approaching nightmare. It didn't shimmer with chrome or pulse with blue plasma like council vessels. It was ugly, bulky, covered in black plating scorched from decades of silent warfare. There was no crew anthem, no brass ceremony. Just Ryn's voice, low and flat over the internal comms. "If you're here for glory, you're in the wrong place. If you're here to die for something, buckle in." The 27 aboard didn't answer. They were the kind of people who had already made peace with death a long time ago. Mercenaries with no past. Scientists erased from databases. AI fragments held together by spite. And in the middle of the ship, sealed beneath layers of quantum shielding, sat the core. Lynn's creation. A war engine disguised as a physics experiment. It didn't fire beams. It didn't explode. It unwrote space, time, memory. Once activated, it would eat its way into local space-time and collapse whatever was touching it into a singularity of non-history. That was how it would kill the silencer, or how it would erase everything in a 100,000-kilometer radius, including the Glass Hound itself. Ryn didn't care. He didn't sign up to come home. On Earth, Admiral Holt stood in the central ops chamber beneath what used to be the Appalachian Mountains. The bunker was ancient, reinforced, hidden under centuries of silence and fake seismic data. The screens lit up with red pulses. The silencer was nearing Saturn's orbit. Her command staff were silent, watching, waiting. Dr. Lynn Sorrell sat beside her, drinking bitter tea from a cracked mug. "He won't come back," Lynn said softly. Holt didn't respond. "You know that, right?" Still nothing. "I built that thing, Reyna. I know it. You don't bring back the bullet after you pull the trigger." Holt finally turned to her. "You said it had a 6% survivability window." "Yeah," Lynn said, raising an eyebrow, which was my sarcastic way of saying 0. Meanwhile, across a dozen systems, the galaxy held its breath. The Council had pulled back its fleets. The tribute ships stopped running. Even pirate broadcasts went silent. Every civilization, from the molten-forged kings of Ashtaroth to the jungle-stone rebels of Velran, waited to see what humanity would do next. Because this wasn't just about Earth anymore. This was about what was allowed. And humans, no matter how strange, loud, or violent, had done something no other race dared. They broke the Council's illusion. Now the galaxy wanted to know if it would last, or if it would be crushed under the weight of history. The silencer was visible now. A swirling mass the size of a moon, with arms of liquid gravity spinning like a whirlpool of black metal. It didn't fire weapons. It absorbed time. Rin watched it from the bridge of the Glass Hound, silently studying the way its mass distorted light around it, folding stars like wet paper. The readings on the console meant nothing. Even Lin's predictive models had begun to fail the closer they got. Nothing about this was rational. This was war between ideas, belief systems. A species that refused to be told no versus a system that demanded obedience to survive. "Activate cloak," Rin ordered. The Hound vanished from standard sensors, shrouded in refracted matter fields developed during humanity's brief war with the Pale Dwellers in the Kepler Zone. He stood up, strapped into his harness, and looked at the projection of Earth one last time. He didn't speak to the crew. He simply pressed record. "If this reaches you, I'm already part of whatever storm just happened. I don't need a statue. I don't want a memorial. Just remember that we didn't go quietly. We never did. Humanity. We were chaos with a heartbeat, and I'd rather burn than ever be tame." Inside the council chambers, the Speaker of Suns watched silently. No orders, no speeches, just the stare of something ancient and arrogant, trying to convince itself it was still in control. Back in human-controlled space, rebel signals flared across 6 more systems. Vari ships were swarming council patrol routes. A faction of exiled Zareth priests detonated a trade relay in protest. The colony of Juno Arc declared full independence and offered sanctuary to any alien who renounced the tribute pact. Hope, once a fragile whisper, had become a scream, and Earth had become more than a world. It had become a symbol. The Glass Hound entered the silencer's gravity field. Immediately, half its systems shut down. Artificial gravity stuttered. Crew members floated and slammed back down as magnetic boots rebooted. Rin clung to the central rail, checking the core's stabilization readouts. It was glowing. Faint blue tendrils of warped light danced along its casing. "Ignition protocol in 7 minutes," the ship's AI said. Outside, the visual screens distorted. One crew member, a young pilot with rust-colored hair and too many scars, whispered, "We're in the belly of it." Rin looked at the image of the silencer. It wasn't mechanical in any recognizable way. It pulsed like a living thing, dragging time inward, devouring everything within reach. "This is it," he muttered. "Light it up." On Earth, alarms blared across Central Ops. The silencer had begun its temporal compression wave. It wasn't just aiming at Earth. It was reversing time in bursts, turning asteroid belts back to dust, crumbling orbital stations back into assembly pieces, even making some defense satellites unlaunch themselves. And it was accelerating. 10 minutes. That's all Earth had before its outer stations became history. Maybe less. Holt didn't panic. She didn't shout. She stood still, watching the live feed from the Glass Hound's last working relay. Then she whispered, "Rin, please be the bastard they always feared." Inside the Hound, the activation countdown began. Core temperature, 72%. Reality compression, initializing. Outside, the silencer's tendrils began to reach in. Rin saw his crewmates' expressions start to distort, some mouths opening before their eyes blinked, hands reaching before arms moved. Time was bending. He walked to the core, opened the override panel, and removed the final safety key. "Manual detonation authorized," the ship's AI said. "Damn right," Rin replied. He looked up into the warping light and grinned. "Hey, Galaxy," he whispered. Watch what a mistake looks like. The core detonated, but it didn't explode. It unfolded, like a flower in reverse. Space peeled, time buckled. The silencer twisted, screaming in frequencies only dying stars understood. And then it imploded. The glass hound, Rin, and the silencer vanished in a single breath of blue-white silence. And then, nothing. Back on Earth, the sky went black. Every system across the Sol network reset. Satellites blinked, shields dropped, people screamed, and then stars reappeared. Not one less, not one more. And on the screen above Holt's head, a single line of code blinked into existence. Object destroyed. Subject, silencer. Casualty confirmed, Rin. Dr. Lin said nothing. Her hands were trembling. Not from fear, from awe. Do you realize what he did? She whispered. Holt didn't answer. She just looked up at the stars. All across council space, panic erupted. The silencer was gone. Gone. Erased. The weapon of enforcement, the myth of obedience. The threat that had kept 1,000 species kneeling had been broken by a single ship from a world that was still building ocean farms and repairing gravity elevators. And the speaker of suns? He didn't speak. He simply lowered his head and turned off the chamber lights. The ripple from Rin's sacrifice was bigger than anyone imagined. More tribute worlds rebelled. Council-aligned corporations collapsed. Alien scholars rewrote history books in real time. And slowly, species that had never dared look up began to look forward. They didn't see Earth as primitive anymore. They saw it as a fuse, and the whole galaxy was filled with gunpowder. 1 week later, Holt stood in front of Earth's unified assembly. She didn't wear her uniform. She wore black. Not for show. For Rin. She stepped up to the podium and looked out at the room. Human. Alien. Hybrid. And she said only this. They wanted submission. We gave them legacy. They wanted silence. We gave them thunder. They took one of our best. But he left us a galaxy to finish what he started. We are not afraid. We are not alone. We are the storm now. 3 weeks after the silencer was erased from existence, the galaxy wasn't just watching Earth anymore. It was turning toward it. One by one, the old chains were starting to rust. The Council, though still vast and terrifying, had become something it had never been before. Fallible. On tribute worlds from the Glorn fields of Vexa Prime to the flooded ruins of Yarok, new voices began rising in their own languages. But the meaning was the same. No more. Not us. Not again. Not after Earth. On Earth, Admiral Reyna Holt had never felt more tired. Not physically. Something deeper. The kind of exhaustion that sat behind the eyes and never left, no matter how much sleep you caught or how many injections the medics gave you. She was sitting in the cold observation room above the newly rebuilt orbital command platform, Skyhook 1. It had taken decades to plan, 3 years to fail to build, and 4 months of desperation to finally finish under pressure of extinction. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And it was now Earth's new frontline post. A doorway. A promise. A warning. Dr. Lynn Sorrell stood next to her, arms folded behind her back, watching the new docking platform calibrate. They've sent messages, Lynn said quietly. Who? The Vari, the Zilith, the Garoon, even the old Zanari clans from the Drift Clouds. They want something. They want protection, Holt replied. No, Lynn corrected. They want permission. The moment Earth refused tribute and survived the response, something much older than rebellion had begun to stir in the minds of 1,000 subjugated civilizations. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about permission to resist, to say no, to say enough. And Earth had become the precedent. No vote, no approval, just survival earned through teeth and flame. Meanwhile, deep in what had once been neutral council space, whispers began spreading about the Obsidian Protocol. No one could trace its origin. No species claimed responsibility. It wasn't a fleet or a movement. Not yet. It was an idea. Encrypted signals began appearing in abandoned beacons and junk satellites. Short phrases, always in different languages, but with the same core message. You are not broken. You are just waiting to wake up. And below it, always, the symbol. A cracked eye over a planet. No one knew what it meant. But it was showing up everywhere the council was losing grip. The Speaker of Suns, once silent and supreme, had begun issuing commands again. But this time, they were desperate. One of the edicts ordered a full invasion of Kor Val, a border world that had recently declared independence. The attack was surgical, overwhelming, entire cities erased in minutes, broadcasts cut off, cultural centers destroyed. But before the signal died, one final image leaked out. A young Kor child, barely old enough to speak, raising a makeshift flag, stitched with Earth's old orbital insignia. That image spread faster than the war. And in response, 4 tribute worlds cut ties with the Council the very next day. 2 others bombed their own tribute depots and declared they would never pay again. And one, Valen Prime, a planet known for its artists and pacifist scholars, launched a suicide ship at a Council destroyer, vaporizing it with a repurposed mining core. The war wasn't spreading anymore. It was boiling. Back in the underground chambers of Project Ember, human operatives had begun activating deep sleeper cells planted decades ago in anticipation of this very moment. Some of the agents weren't even aware they were part of the plan. Earth had gambled everything on survival. And now the payback was more dangerous than anyone could have guessed. One such agent, known only by his call sign, Gleam, stood inside a hidden room on Calthus, a council-controlled trade hub. He stared at a blinking light on the wall, his signal. He'd lived there for 17 years, married a local, raised children, traded spice routes, and smuggled information back in fragments too small to trace. And now he was active. He opened a metal case he hadn't touched in almost 2 decades. Inside, a small transmitter, a modified neural override chip, and a data drive containing 5 terabytes of weapon blueprints, human-patched virus protocols, and evidence of council mass cleansing operations going back over 4 centuries. He activated it all, and within hours, Calthus burned. Not from fire, from truth. Meanwhile, Dr. Lin was making new enemies back home, the Unified Human Assembly, now burdened with keeping Earth from collapsing under its own momentum, had started debating her latest proposal. Not a weapon, a fleet, a new kind. Ships built not to defend Earth, but to spread something the Council had never encountered before in battle. Free knowledge, not bullets, not bombs, understanding, blueprints, rebellions, communication relays, anti-gravity tech, food replication. Every piece of forbidden Council-banned knowledge humanity had hoarded over the years would now be distributed across the stars. Not secretly, not through spies, publicly. "We don't win by killing them," Lin said in the assembly chamber, standing alone before hundreds of divided minds. "We win by making them irrelevant, by giving the galaxy back to itself." Of course, the vote didn't pass. Yet. But 3 hours after her speech leaked to the outer colonies, 13 more worlds joined the Earth-aligned rebellion. Some gave troops, others gave ships. One simply gave a promise. "When the fires come, we'll burn our skies before we ever bow again." And then, the Council made its worst mistake yet. They sent a messenger. A diplomatic envoy ship, glittering and elegant, arrived in Earth's orbit under a white flag pulse. It wasn't a trick. There were no weapons, just 4 delegates and an AI-hosted message from the speaker himself. Admiral Holt refused to meet them personally. She sent Commander Ara Nell. Ara didn't smile, didn't offer pleasantries. She stood before the glimmering alien diplomats in Earth's central hall, with her fingers drumming the table like war drums. "You're here to offer peace," she said coldly. The lead delegate, something tall, spindly, and laced with bioluminescent tendrils, nodded. "We propose conditional non-aggression in exchange for compliance with—" Ara raised a hand. "No." The room went still. No negotiation. No partial submission, no softened chains. We're not going back in the box. The delegate's glow dimmed slightly. "Your defiance endangers more than your own species. The galaxy craves order." Ara stood. "Then let it choke on our chaos." She turned and left without another word. The message was clear. The war would go on. In orbit, Earth's first interspecies summit took place aboard Skyhook 1. Delegates from 6 non-human species, Vari, Oranox, Zilith, Garoon, Zanari, and Merc, met with human diplomats to discuss the formation of something new. Not an empire, not a council, a union of free worlds. The room was tense. Language barriers flickered, traditions clashed. But they stayed, they argued, they debated, and by the end of it, every one of them signed one line. "We will not kneel again." At the edge of the galaxy, remnants of the Council fleet began to gather for what would be their next move. Not a strike, not a purge, a reckoning. They began resurrecting something ancient, a weapon so old it had been buried in memory, a planet killer known only as Echelon, stored beyond the dark veil of Arcora's maw, a black hole so deep even light forgets how to move. The galaxy would forget Earth, they thought. And if not, it would watch Earth burn. Back on Earth, Lynn was building something new. A failsafe. A final answer. Her lab sat deep beneath the Siberian ruins, powered by old reactors and guarded by people with no names. She called it the mirror engine. It didn't destroy things. It didn't kill. It reflected. A weapon that made its target face the consequences of its own past, literally. An echo loop of history, trauma, genocide, projected directly into the minds of those who tried to wield power over others. "It won't stop the Council," she admitted quietly, calibrating the prototype. "But it might make them see what they've become. And maybe, just maybe, it would buy enough time for the galaxy to finally wake up." On her command ship, Admiral Holt stood once more before her people. Soldiers, civilians, aliens who once feared humans and now followed them. She didn't give a grand speech. She didn't raise a flag. She simply said, "We are the tide, and it's rising." The Council called it Echelon, but among those who had seen it, lived through it, and somehow survived, they called it the Ender. A weapon so massive, so old, it predated some of the very species now enforcing Council law. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a station. It was a machine planet, an artificial world forged from crushed moons and dark matter veins, built in a time when diplomacy had failed and fear ruled the stars. It had only been used once before, thousands of cycles ago. The records of that use were erased. All that remained was a warning etched into a dead asteroid by some long-gone civilization. When Echelon moves, stars fall. And now it was moving again. At the far edge of the galaxy, hidden behind the swirling mass of Arcora's maw, Echelon stirred. The maw, once believed to be a black hole, was, in fact, a disguise. A gravitational cloaking field powered by ancient engineering, dense enough to fold light and time around the thing it hid. Now the field was dropping, revealing the nightmare inside. On Earth, the signal came in broken fragments, translated across 13 frequencies, filtered through dark channels and resistance groups all the way from the Velen Drift. Admiral Reyna Holt stood in silence, watching the projection of Echelon on the holotable. It dwarfed any known structure, bigger than a planet, alive in some way, its core pulsing with gravitational rhythms that made instruments shiver. Even Lynn looked unsettled. And Lynn never looked unsettled. "What do we know?" Holt asked, not taking her eyes off the massive projection. Lynn exhaled slowly. "It bends time. Not just folds or compresses it, bends it. Think of a hammer slamming into a mirror. Reality cracks. But it doesn't shatter all at once. You see the cracks before it breaks." "And what happens when it breaks?" Holt asked. Lynn didn't answer. She didn't need to. They all knew. If Echelon reached Earth, there wouldn't be a war. There wouldn't be anything left to fight over. Across the outer colonies, panic bloomed like wildfire. The Oranoks began evacuating their eggs from Shinari Cradle. The Vari pulled their fleets into scattered silence, choosing to fight only when directly threatened. The Zanari vanished into nebulae, whispering prophecies to their dead gods. And the humans? They prepared. Because that's what humans do when the sky is falling. They don't beg. They don't bow. They build. In the ancient vaults of Carpathia Deep, the last of Earth's pre-galactic era AIs, codenamed Holostream, was reactivated. Its ethics had been locked behind 5 failsafe codes since the Pacific collapse. Now those codes were broken, not because they trusted it, because there was no one else left who could think fast enough, wide enough, desperate enough to give humanity a shot. Holostream's voice filled the chamber. Male, female, something in between, impossibly calm. "You've waited a long time, Admiral Holt. We need time and fire. Then let's give the galaxy both." Meanwhile, in the shadowed ruins of a council listening post on Ilkaras, a human deep ops unit found something unexpected. A recording. Not from the council, from inside Echelon, encrypted, decaying, but still partially readable. They brought it back to Earth. Lynn spent 2 days decoding it, and when she finally played it, Holt, Ara, and the entire unified assembly stood in silence as the voice echoed from speakers. It was human. Ancient, scarred, tired. "If you're hearing this, it means Echelon survived. We failed to destroy it, but we slowed it. We were part of the first generation to reach the stars, long before Earth forgot us. We thought we could end the council. We thought wrong, but we built something into Echelon's code. A backdoor, a flaw, a whisper in the scream. You have to reach the core, and you'll need a name to get in. Not a password. A name. The name of the one who broke the council's chain." The recording ended in static. No identity, no location. Just a single corrupted word at the very end. Rin. The war hero the galaxy had mourned wasn't gone. At least, not entirely. Lynn leaned forward, brows furrowed, whispering more to herself than anyone else. He didn't die, not fully. His consciousness might have been absorbed. "Into Echelon?" Ara asked. "No," Lynn said slowly. "Into the anomaly he created. The fold, the ripple. Rin might exist inside the gap between what happened and what should have happened." "Are you saying he's alive?" Holt asked. "I'm saying," Lynn answered, "his name is." So Earth built a ship. Not just any ship. A core runner, faster than light, wrapped in phase armor, capable of resisting gravitational collapse for up to 17 minutes. Its name? The Memory. Crewed by 12. Powered by Holostream. Guided by math too unstable to write down. Its mission? Reach Echelon. Find the core. Use Rin's name. And pray to anything listening that it still meant something inside the machine that ended civilizations. Aranel volunteered to lead the mission. No argument, no hesitation. She didn't do it for glory. She did it because she didn't know how to stop fighting. She gathered her crew, humans, Oranox, Vari, even a rogue Garoon engineer named Threet, who spoke in cliques and painted his armor with the names of council victims. They didn't expect to come back. They just wanted to give Earth a chance. As the memory launched from Mars' dark side, Holt watched in silence. Lynn stood beside her, arms crossed. "She won't make it," Lynn said flatly. "She'll get inside." Lynn shook her head. "No, I mean she won't survive the core. None of them will. Echelon doesn't forget who kills it. You said it needs a name." "It does." "And what if that name isn't Rin?" Holt asked. Lynn turned her head slightly, her voice lower now. "Then the machine will choose one for us." 3 days into the mission, the memory breached Echelon's outer field. It didn't enter space. It entered history. Fragments of worlds long gone orbited Echelon's skin like whispers, cities broken in slow motion, ships caught mid-collapse, voices screaming in frozen time. And at the center, the core. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive, pulsing with light that didn't reflect, only absorbed. Ara stood on the bridge, watching as Holostream guided them closer. "Time dilation at 600%, Holostream said calmly. "Crew aging by approximately 20 minutes per real-time hour." "Noted," Ara replied. "Drop to Phase 3 armor. Prepare for breach." They moved forward, and as they did, something strange happened. The ship began to hum, not from its own systems, from the walls, a voice, faint, unmistakable. "You came back." Ara's heart stopped. She whispered, "Rin?" Silence. Then, "You have one chance. Say it." She stepped forward, touching the core's access panel. The ship shook. Light shattered into prisms around her. She closed her eyes and spoke the name. "Rin." The ship stilled. The light froze, and then, for a single second, the entire galaxy stopped. On Earth, sensors flatlined. The sun dimmed, satellites rebooted, and Holostream's duplicate screamed through every terminal. "Core entry confirmed. Pathway opened. Initiate mirror engine." Lynn slammed her hand on the launch panel. The mirror engine, buried in Earth's mantle, pointed upward into the sky, roared to life. It sent a pulse faster than light. Not a weapon, a reflection. It used Echelon's own temporal distortion to send its victims themselves, their memories, their crimes, their genocides. Back at them. The Council command ships orbiting Veltrax 9 screamed and tore themselves apart. The remaining fleets halted, and for the first time in recorded history, Council High Command went dark. Inside Echelon, Aranel stood before the core, burning alive from the inside out, her mind fraying from the pressure but still standing. And before her stood Rin, or what was left of him. Not a man, a memory, a weapon, a name etched into the bleeding heart of a machine that no longer wanted to kill. "I held the line," he said softly. She nodded, tears boiling in her eyes. "You broke it," Rin smiled faintly. "Now break the cycle." And then he was gone. The memory collapsed inward. The core folded. Echelon died screaming, and the shockwave didn't destroy Earth. It healed it, tore through space like wind clearing smoke, and in its wake, the Council fell, not with fire, but with silence. There was no explosion when Echelon died. No blinding light, no final pulse of destruction. It simply disappeared. One moment, it filled the void like a god's tombstone. The next, it was gone, swallowed by the very silence it had used to command fear for millennia. But its death echoed across the galaxy in ways no one was prepared for. Ships stopped mid-flight. Gravitational waves rolled through systems like invisible tsunamis. Entire council communication networks blinked out, never to return. On Earth, the skies trembled for 10 seconds. Birds stopped flying. Oceans stilled. Children awoke from sleep crying without knowing why. And then, peace. Not the kind carved by treaties or diplomacy. The kind that arrives after something ancient and cruel finally lets go. In the orbital chamber aboard Skyhook 1, Admiral Rayna Holt stared at the data streams with hollow eyes. She hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. Dr. Lynn Sorrell stood behind her, hands resting on the steel rail, her face blank. "We did it," someone said from the room, a whisper, shaky, uncertain. "No," Lynn murmured. "We survived it." Hollowstream's voice chimed in. "Echelon's core is gone. Time resonance stabilizing. The threat has passed. The Council's primary enforcement structure has collapsed." But Holt wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on a still image frozen on the center screen. Ara Nell, standing at the center of Echelon's heart, just before the system broke. Her body was visibly failing. Blood dripping from her nose, pressure crushing her suit, the sheer force of temporal distortion breaking her from the inside out. But she was standing, facing what remained of Rin, and now she was gone. No escape trajectory, no signal, no trace. Just memory. The galaxy spun on, but the Council did not. Their fleets splintered overnight, command chains fractured. Planetary governors either vanished into hiding or begged Earth for sanctuary, and on 1,000 tribute worlds, statues of council wardens were pulled down, burned, or left to decay. Humanity hadn't just won, they'd detonated the myth of invincibility. But victory is a strange thing, especially in a galaxy built on fear. Because once fear is gone, once the tyrants are dead or running, what's left? Hope? No, chaos. Within days of the Council's collapse, power vacuums opened across entire sectors. On Yvren Prime, a rogue military caste seized control of former Council factories, declaring themselves the New Order. They executed 50 dissidents in the capital square, live-streamed it, and warned Earth not to interfere. On the fractured moons of Zerna 4, 3 species once united under Council pressure fell into civil war, killing more in a week than they had in 30 years of rebellion. And in the ruins of Kasari Station, a previously unknown warlord, Vadrik the Severed, claimed ownership of Council bioweapon caches, offering to sell them to the highest bidder. The Council had been cruel, but it had been organized. Now the galaxy teetered. Inside the unified human assembly, debate turned vicious. "How much blood are we willing to spend?" one ambassador demanded, slamming his fist on the table. "We didn't sign up to babysit a burning galaxy," another shouted over him. "Those people rose up because of us. We're responsible." Holt sat in silence at the head of the table. Lynn leaned over to her, voice low. "They were never ready to lead." "No," Holt agreed. "But we gave them the match. We don't get to walk away from the fire." "So what now?" Lynn asked. "We stabilize what we can. We hold what we must. And we make damn sure no one fills the vacuum with another crown." Thus began Operation Suture. Not a military campaign. A mission of containment and reconstruction. Earth began deploying support teams to critical systems. Engineers, medics, food printers, clean water drones. Not soldiers, not conquerors. They rebuilt cities the Council had left broken. They opened schools in places that had only ever known labor camps. They gave the oppressed something they'd never been offered before: self-determination. And across a galaxy used to dominance, that became more powerful than any fleet. But not everyone was happy. Earth's economy, stretched thin, began to crack. Military units, pulled into endless stability deployments, suffered morale breakdowns. On Mars, protests erupted. On Luna, an underground group calling itself the Shieldborn hacked into the planetary comms and aired their manifesto. We were defenders, not saviors. We fought to protect Earth, not to feed alien mouths and fix alien worlds. Our blood is ours. Bring the fleets home. Their message went viral. So did their support. In the shadows, old Council sympathizers began to regroup. A movement known as the Quiet Flame emerged, whispering about balance, structure, and order without chains. They didn't fly banners or build fleets. They seeded doubt. They hijacked supply routes. They began planting false evidence of human sabotage on neutral worlds. The goal? Turn the galaxy against its liberators. And slowly, it started working. Back in the core systems, Lynn met with Hollowstream alone. They were deep beneath the Arctic Circle, in a lab designed to run 500 years without sunlight or human input. She stood before the mirror engine's twin. The lens, a failsafe, not designed to reflect history, designed to see the future. Hollowstream spoke softly. Would you like to know where all this leads? Lynn narrowed her eyes. No, she said. I want to know what's missing. Hollowstream hesitated. A leader. Lynn turned away. No, she said. A voice. Earth had no emperor, no queen, no speaker of sons. It had a fractured assembly and 1,000 arguments, but it had no single voice for the galaxy to hear. And that silence was becoming dangerous, because others were beginning to speak louder. Then, from deep space, a signal came through. No encryption, no code, just an old Earth voice, damaged, echoing, Ara Nel, alive. Or something like it. The message was only 9 seconds long. The core is still beating. The dream is not dead, but we must choose. Will we rule, or will we rise? Then static. Hollowstream traced the origin to the remains of Echelon's debris field, where no signal should have survived. The assembly panicked. Was it a warning, a threat, a call? Lynn, however, only smiled. She's telling us what's next. So Earth gathered its allies. The Vari clans, once scattered and tribal, now united under a new banner of cultural rebirth. The Orinocs, who pledged to share their pre-council technology for peaceful use. The Merc remnants, ancient knowledge keepers once enslaved, now free. Even the reluctant Garoon, who had once sold weapons to both sides, now began aligning themselves with Earth's vision. They didn't agree on much, but they agreed on this. We will not be ruled, we will not be tamed, and we will not become what we destroyed. And so, beneath the ruins of a galaxy built on chains, something new began to form. A movement, a union, not of territory but of choice, a promise etched into the foundation of this new age. Freedom is not peace, it is struggle, and we accept it. The war was over, but the revolution, that was just beginning. The stars had never been so quiet. For the first time in recorded galactic history, there were no fleets on the move, no tribute ships departing, no colonies forced to kneel. The Council was dead, its statues shattered, its systems fractured, its memory burned into data archives as a cautionary tale rather than a legacy. And at the heart of the silence, Earth stood, not as a conqueror, not as a ruler, but as something even more dangerous to the old order, an idea. Admiral Reyna Holt watched the sunrise from the top of the new Eden Tower, the tallest structure in what used to be the city-state of Dakar. It was rebuilt now. Glass arcs, clean energy grids, green corridors growing food on vertical farms. She wasn't in uniform, no stars on her shoulders, no medals, just a gray shirt, worn at the edges, and the face of someone who'd carried too much for too long. Lynn Sorrell sat beside her, legs crossed on the platform edge, a flask of black tea in one hand, and her long, unkempt hair whipping in the morning breeze. "They want to elect you," Lynn said after a long silence. "I know. They're saying it's the only way to hold the peace, a single voice. Someone the outer systems trust, someone the rebels fear just enough to listen." "I know." "So?" Holt looked out over the green city, the people walking below, the silence that hadn't existed for so many years. "I didn't survive this war to put a crown on my head," she said. "I didn't fight to become the next Speaker of Suns." Lynn took a slow sip of tea. "You might not want the crown," she said, "but someone will take it if you don't." Across the stars, Earth's influence had outpaced even its own imagination. The Union of Free Worlds, once an idea, was now a functional, if chaotic, alliance. No central throne, no supreme council, just a shared set of principles. No world shall be ruled without its consent. No species shall be silenced. No tribute shall ever be demanded again. It was messy. Arguments flared daily. Cultural clashes. Translation errors. Resource disputes. But it was alive. Something real. And it was working. But not everyone believed in it. In the system of Zarna 5, a charismatic warlord named Vel Raketh declared Earth a false prophet, calling the Union a second empire wearing a smiling mask. His followers, known as the Black Mantle, broadcast daily accusations that Earth had merely replaced the Council's domination with softer chains. On Kiris Minor, a bomb exploded in a refugee clinic, killing 12 humans, 6 Vari, and a Merc medic. The group behind it, the Purity Accord, believed humanity should remain isolated, pure, unentangled from alien species and galactic responsibility. And in the deep shadow bands beyond Thranax, Council loyalists had begun whispering the old creeds again. The Council might have died, but its rot still lingered. That was when the signal returned, the one that had first been thought a myth, the echo of Ara Nell. Her voice came through unfiltered, this time longer, clearer. "If you're hearing this, I'm alive, not in the way you remember, not flesh. I don't belong to time anymore. I belong to the wound." Echelon didn't end. It opened. And inside it, I found others. Not just Rin, but the forgotten, the erased. All the ones the Council buried in silence. They're still there, they remember, and they're waiting. Static broke the message. Then a final line. "The war is not over. It just moved somewhere we can't follow yet. But someday, we will." The message caused a firestorm. Some took it as a prophecy, some as a threat. Others insisted it was a hoax, code stitched together by a rogue AI, designed to stir unrest. But Holt knew better. She knew Ara. And she knew that voice. A summit was called, held on Ilyar Station, a massive Orinox-built habitat floating between systems. It was the first truly interspecies congressional assembly in galactic history. Thousands attended. Vari chieftains, Orinox philosophers, Garoon engineers, human delegates, even the Merc, who spoke only through scent and light. The topic? Unity. Could the Union survive without a central figure? Could Earth remain a symbol rather than a scepter? And what came next? Now that the galaxy was free, who decided its future? Holt didn't want to speak. She never wanted to speak again. But Lynn was right. Someone else would, if she didn't, and they might speak in chains. So Holt stood before the largest audience the galaxy had ever seen. Her voice clear, her eyes sharp, her scars visible. She wore no medals. Only the broken earth patch from the war, stitched onto her chest like a reminder of the cost. And she said, "This isn't about power. This isn't about glory. This is about the bruises the galaxy still carries. We survived the Council. We tore out the cancer. But healing takes more than cutting. The Union must not become what we hated. No flags, no forced unity. Let this be a place where disagreement is sacred, where diversity isn't a threat, and where no one ever kneels again unless by choice. If you want me to lead, I will. But I will not rule. I will not become the next god of the stars. I am not the voice of humanity. I am only a human voice. And when she was done, there was no applause. Just silence. Then one voice, a murk tone of glowing purple. The Orinox translated it aloud. We accept the voice. We do not follow it. We walk beside it. And that became the new code. No leaders, no rulers, no gods, just voices walking side by side. Different, flawed, but free. In the decades that followed, the galaxy reshaped itself. Some worlds joined the Union. Some remained independent. Others chose isolation, their doors closed but their skies peaceful. Earth became less a planet, more a bridge, a place where ideas met, where wounds were healed, where survivors found new names for themselves. Children on distant worlds studied human history not to fear it, but to understand what made them refuse. The tribute chains became museum relics. The words, "We will not yield," were etched into stone on planets that had never seen Earth, but felt it. And in the deep dark, beyond mapped space, whispers still echoed. Of Ara, of Rin, of something beyond Echelon. A war still waiting in the bones of time, not with weapons, but with memory. Lynn Sorel eventually left Earth. She vanished without a goodbye, her last known location somewhere beyond Cygnus' reach. Some say she went to find the source of Ara's final signal. Others say she became it. As for Holt, she stepped down. 12 years after the war ended, she gave her last speech, returned to the mountains of New Greenland, and lived without ceremony or spotlight. She died quietly, decades later, surrounded by books and trees. On her tombstone were no titles, just one sentence: she didn't kneel. And so the galaxy moved forward. Not perfect, never peaceful, but freer than it had ever been, because once a single voice says no, loud enough, clear enough, others begin to whisper it too. And eventually,